Hey guys, it's Dave from Curtis Crafts, and last time on this show I made the Curse Crusher sword from Onward. I'm going to continue with that theme by turning this really terrible AMT rescue van kit into Guinevere, who also happens to be my favorite character from the movie.
You know, Chris Pratt tried to keep acting in the family, but his actual great-great-grandson decided to become a chef specializing in rodents. He called his restaurant Crisp Rats.
You know, that's actually a joke, and I've heard it a whole bunch of times. You know, like Chris Pratt, Crisp Rat. It's not even actually that funny.
That's real life 100 years from now. Why is that a joke?
You know what, just forget it. I'm going to start off by saying this AMT model kit was not very fun to put together. It's not well made. A lot of the parts I had to pose with hot glue and other things that didn't really make sense, but had to be done. But nonetheless, this came as a bright red body. I primed it white and began to paint it blue. I also neglected to take off these side marker lights, so I removed them with an X-Acto knife. I'll be putting my own 3D printed side markers on this van later.
In the future, fans are obsolete because we all combine like Voltron and ride as one.
Once I removed the markers, I added a little bit of a purple highlight to the side panels, and I began to use some Army Painter Bright Silver to paint some of the details in. For the rear window, this model didn't have any glass or anything in the back, so I opted to just paint out some silver rectangles and then fill them in with black later. Then I move on to painting dirt spatter all over the van and inside the door seams and anywhere dirt could be built up. I'm using a reference photo, so I'm trying to put it where most of the dirt was in the movie. I really like a lot of the character they gave to this van, so I'm trying to replicate it as much as I can in this 1/25 scale. Then I mix a lighter shade of blue to make it look like the clear coat has been peeling in various places on the top and some of the sides of the van. I made some custom 3D files with what little 3D drawing ability I have, and replicated the spare tire cover on the back with the shield, the side marker lights, and the roof lights, as well as the side crescent windows. If I had a resin printer, these would have turned out better, so I just used a lot of clear coat in order to smooth out the shapes, sand them, and paint them. I used a watered-down Citadel leather color in order to make some of the van look like the wood paneling from the movie. I print out 2 test designs that are different sizes. I pulled these directly from the movie and edited them out a little bit to make them stand out better. The smaller one seems to fit and look better. I'm using this inkjet clear paper that prints out decals from your regular printer. Once you've let the ink dry from the printer, you just spray them with a clear varnish and then put them in water and apply. But as I soon find out, this first batch is a failure. So the issue here is that on the dark background of the blue van, these clear decals don't show up that well. The reason being is that the printer doesn't actually print out the white part of the unicorn, so it only prints out the dark blue and the dark purple parts, which don't really show up against the van. So what I'm going to do is spray out a little bit of white background and then come back and fill in around the unicorn later. While I'm letting the newly sprayed white dry on the sides, I go ahead and put the marker lights on. These all just get super glued in their various positions. Then the spare tire cover goes on the back. And I was able to use an X-Acto knife to pop any bubbles, reposition it, and then I began the horrifying task of trying to outline the sides with an airbrush. This proves to be a bit difficult because my hands aren't exactly steady, but I did manage to control enough paint flow to just get around the outside of the design. Then I add some of the purple cloud back in, and hand paint on some of the lightning bolts and stars. Then go back with the airbrush and layer them over with the purple cloud so they're not as bright. One of the cooler ideas I've ever had in my life was to put this entire van on top of a cassette tape and use it as the stand. Once I found a junk cassette in my collection that kind of matched the color of the one from the movie, I printed out a piece of paper with the Rise to Valhalla logo on it and adjusted it to fit the size of the cassette. And this wound up looking pretty cool. Since this is a static sculpture, none of the wheels need to roll, and I wanted them to look more like they were hanging off of the chassis than firmly attached. So they look more like all the weight was let go off of the wheels. I also knifed out and made a flat tire for the left rear tire. I paint out part of the grill so it looks more like the one from the movie, and then glue on a small clear tube that actually held solder at one point. And if you're wondering if I actually used any of the solder in it, the answer is no. I actually found this tube, threw all the solder in a bin because I thought it was super cool, and that decision will likely bite me later. I cut the drive shaft back off of the van because it was in the way of this hole that I'm using to hold it up. Once I have it in a position I like, I hot glue it in place and wait for it to dry. Once the van was up on its stand, I did a little light weathering to put some of the brown back, and that finishes off the miniature version of Guinevere from Onward.
I don't understand why you'd make a vehicle that no one can fit in. It just doesn't make sense.
It's a replica. That's not how... Anyway, just roll it spinning or something.
This song is sick. Sub it up, DJ Conrad 9K. Subscribe for more adventures and quests.